Greetings, all you abandoned colonists out there. Welcome to Undeclared Bajor, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine rewatch, Season 2. My name is Fletcher. About to say hello is Data.
What's up?
Today we're going to recap, discuss, and rate Season 2, Episode 20, The Maquis, Part 1. Alternate title, Prelude to the Maquis, Part 2.
I like it. Escape to the House of Mummies, Part 2. Yeah, all right.
Escape to the House of the Maquis, Part 2. A quick note on spoilers in case our rewatch is your first watch. Expect full spoilers through this episode, and an appropriate minimum of minor spoilers for later in the series, but nothing too big, like the Doctor Who crossover, where Dax and the Doctor get into a reincarnation fight.
You know what? I'd watch that.
I bet a lot of people would. A lot of people. This episode originally aired April 24th, 1994, so it's been about a month since the last Deep Space Nine episode. And in that month, some things have happened in the world. The journal Nature reports the finding in Ethiopia of the first complete Australopithecus afarensis skull.
Oh my god.
Yeah. That's the thing that Lucy is.
It's my favorite Australopithecus.
Yep. And sadly, we lost, tragically, Kurt Cobain, the lead singer of Nirvana, at age 27 at his home in Seattle. His body was found 3 days later. And that's about it.
Those two things happened. Only in that 1 month, those are the two things that happened.
3 days from now, South Africa will hold its first fully multiracial elections, marking the final end of the last vestiges of apartheid. Nelson Mandela wins the elections and is sworn in as the first democratically elected president the following month. So, stuff going on in the world. Good stuff and bad stuff. Oh, did you know that on February 12th, 1994, Edvard Munch's painting The Scream was stolen from Oslo?
I do remember hearing about it being stolen at some point. I did not know that was specifically when it was stolen.
And it was recovered on May 7th. So this episode aired in the era when the fate of The Scream was still not known. Other than by the people who had it, I guess.
Apparently it's been stolen. It was stolen in 1994 and then 2004.
Oh my gosh, people, quit stealing The Scream. You think you're going to be able to fence that thing? It's like the most famous painting in the world.
So now I have to read about the 2004 one. Hold on. So during daylight hours, masked gunmen entered the Munch Museum in Oslo and stole that and Munch's Madonna.
Ooh.
A bystander photographed the robbers as they escaped to their car with the artwork. This was August 2004. On April 2005, Norwegian police arrested a suspect, but the paintings remained missing. Let's see. In June of 2005, a reward of 2 million Norwegian krone, roughly $313,000 US, was offered for information to help locate the paintings. The paintings remained missing when the men went to trial in 2006.
I mean, I assume we got them back at some point.
Let's see. On August 31st, 2006, Norwegian police announced that a police operation had recovered both paintings.
Nice. So The Scream is safe.
Yep. It had some moisture damage in one corner, but...
oh no.
And the Madonna had several tears to the right side of the painting.
These art thieves. They have no respect.
Yeah, I know, right? So yeah, that was a tangent for the beginning of the episode.
This episode was written by James Crocker. Story by...
a lot of people.
Rick Berman,
yep.
Michael Piller, Jerry Taylor, and James Crocker. Which I have a theory. I have a theory that Rick Berman's contribution to this episode was, hey, can we come up with something that we can use in the next series? But I don't want to crap on Rick Berman too much. Rick Berman gets a lot of negative publicity from Star Trek fans. I don't know him. I've just heard lots of bad stories about him. But to be fair, he did preside over the very popular Next Gen era of Star Trek. So
apparently, the one specific mention I can find in the wiki for Rick Berman's contribution to this episode is that at the suggestion of director David Livingston, the costume designer originally designed a much more revealing outfit for Sisko. However, when Rick Berman saw it, he told Blackman to tone it back.
For who?
Sisko, the Vulcan lady.
Oh, sure. Okay. I don't think I ever cared to learn her name. But yes, as you mentioned, the episode was directed by David Livingston. Good old David Livingston. So, recap phase.
Yep.
In a Deep Space Nine airlock, a group of Cardassians finishes up loading a shipment of Persian rugs or something. They close their spaceship door and presumably get ready to depart. However, a mysterious skinny man in a Starfleet uniform sneaks into their airlock and starts tinkering with their ship.
It's just super obviously shady what he's doing. I'm like, can you not be more subtle than that?
It's like, look over here, start tinkering. Meanwhile, in Ops, Dax and Kira get into a weird argument about who has the worst taste in men. Dax, the science officer, is pulling double duty as the air traffic controller for some reason, and gives the Cardassian ship clearance to depart. Which I guess they just don't want to hire an actor to be the air traffic controller for Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Because they're always making like Kira or Dax or someone do it.
It's true. There's always... It really seems like there should be somebody whose job that is, but...
Suddenly, Dax notices something weird on the screen and makes an emergency call to the freighter to shut down their engines immediately. But it's too late. The ship explodes, and all on board are lost.
Okay, hold on. I'm
Okay.
sorry. So I'm really sorry to go back and do this, but I just had to say, in that 1994 theft of the Scream,
Okay.
apparently the two guys broke into the National Gallery in Oslo while people were distracted with the Winter Olympics opening that same day.
Okay. Oh yeah, the Olympics in Lilyhammer.
Yeah, and they left a note where the painting was that says, "Thanks for the poor security." Which
That's just
yeah, that's just in bad. That's bad form.
yeah.
And then the museum refused to pay a $1 million ransom, so the police set up a sting operation with assistance from the British police. But the criminals, the 4 men who were captured, were released on appeal on legal grounds because the British agents involved had entered Norway under false identities.
Okay.
So yeah, those guys just they didn't suffer any long-term consequences.
So they're still at large, huh?
I mean, they're just free to go. It's weird.
There's a documentary on Netflix about an art heist in Boston, which is like the biggest art heist ever in terms of like, money.
Yeah.
And there's this whole thing about, there's this famous art thief. I forgot what the whole thing was, but like he got arrested.
Okay.
And he was like, I can tell you where to get such and such painting if you like let me go. And they were like, to let you go, you'd have to know where like a Rembrandt is. So like after he got out of jail, he went and stole a Rembrandt and held on to it. And next time he got arrested, he was like, I can tell you where that Rembrandt is. And he like, and like after that, it became kind of like this known thing in the underworld that if you steal a Rembrandt, it's a get out of jail free card.
Wow.
And so like in this art heist, like, it was like several Rembrandt paintings and a bunch of Rembrandt sketches and stuff were stolen, and they still have not been recovered to this day. And it's been theorized that they're kind of being held onto by the mafia or something in case they need to trade them for like a get out of jail free card or something.
Interesting. I mean, I don't know that should be a get out of jail free card for like murder, but
True.
But other art heisting I kind of get.
It's a pretty interesting documentary, and I do not remember what it was called, but it's on Netflix, so I'm sure you can figure out which one it is.
Okay.
If you want to watch it. Anyway, back to the episode.
Yeah, right.
Chief O'Brien inspects the debris while the rest of the crew work through the political ramifications. Strangely, O'Brien finds traces of Federation technology in the wreckage, and Dax quickly develops the hypothesis that the explosion was caused by an implosive protomatter device. In other words, foul play.
Proto-matter popping up again after using it to restart that star in the earlier episode or whatever.
This protomatter can do all kinds of stuff.
It really can.
Suddenly, a Starfleet officer strolls into Ops, quickly introduced as Sisko's and Curzon's old buddy, Cal Hudson. Like all characters we've never seen or heard from before who show up and start being all buddy-buddy with the main characters, he seems completely on the up and up, with no ulterior motives or conflicting loyalties.
Nope.
Hudson is the attaché to the Federation colonies that recently got screwed over in the next-gen episode Journey's End, which was the previously aired next-gen episode a few weeks earlier, I believe.
Which, because of like the closeness in the two, it really makes it seem like things went bad really quickly in these colonies.
Hudson and Sisko catch up in Sisko's office, and Cal lets slip some remarks that hint at a deep dislike of Cardassians in the outcome of the recent treaty. Every time Cal Hudson talks, I'm just reminded of that part from the Mr. Plinkett reviews, where it's like you're talking to somebody that you've known for a while, and suddenly they're like, I've been reading Mein Kampf. And you look over and you're like, wait, what's that you just said about Mein Kampf?
I mean, on the one hand, the whole point of that Next Gen episode and this storyline is that both sides of the issue kind of have a point that's understandable, and so you kind of get how this guy who's spending all his time with these people and hearing their problems would sympathize with them.
For sure. I mean, yeah, you totally kind of get where he's coming from, and especially if you've seen the previous episode, and you just know like how badly these people are getting screwed over and what a no-win situation it is for everybody.
But at the same time, when I first watched The Next Generation and saw that episode, like I found it, I don't feel as bad as you're probably supposed to for these colonists, because I'm like, okay, you chose to come out here in space and live on this planet close to the border. Stuff can happen, and so you're given the choice. You can leave, and we'll give you a new place to live, or you can stay here. In which case, in that episode of The Next Generation, they establish you will be giving up your Federation citizenship, and you will be under Cardassian rule.
Right.
And they're like, okay, well, we want to do that. And I'm like, okay, so if you didn't research the Cardassians enough to know what a bad idea that is, that's on you.
Right.
I'm sorry that you have to leave the land that you've worked with your own hands and the houses that you built, with the hammer and nails that you forged yourself or whatever. But that's the way it is. That's the situation. And if you choose not to go along, then you're choosing to accept the consequences. And then we move to DS9, where the theme of this whole storyline is we don't want to accept those consequences that we willingly said we were going to accept.
It's like, what, the Cardassians are mean? What's this? Yeah, you're right, because they were very clearly given, like, they're fully informed, and they were like, okay, this is the decision that you can make, but you got to live with the consequences of it.
Yep.
And it's now like 3 weeks later, and they're like, you know what, we changed our mind. We don't like the consequences of the decision we made.
But we also, presumably, if they went to the Federation and were like, hey, we want to change our minds, will you still give us a new place to live? The Federation will probably be like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Fine. But they still don't want that either. They want this treaty that affects hundreds of star systems to be, like, voided because it affects their system and they don't like that part.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess we'll get more to the politics of this later.
Yeah.
Down on the promenade, mysterious skinny man is studiously reading the mall directory, where he is joined briefly by a mysterious Vulcan lady, who gives him the location of some quarters he can lay low in until his ship off the station arrives. Up on the bridge walkway thing, two mysterious aliens watch the situation mysteriously.
We never really find out much more about those aliens.
Yeah, I mean, they're agents for the Cardassians.
Yeah, that's like all we... Or maybe they're even just like bounty hunters hired by the Cardassians. I don't know.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But Vulcan Lady goes to Quark's, where she and Quark spend 2 whole minutes arranging a future meeting for a business proposition, which Quark obviously intends to double as a gateway to sexy times.
Yeah, I mean, she obviously, it seems like, would be willing to, discuss business now. But he's like, oh, no. We need to have a romantic dinner. And that's and it's just, she seems so naive about the entire thing, as he's just clearly being super smarmy.
Yeah. Yeah, he's basically like, yeah, we can do business, then have sex. And she's like, huh? So yeah, we'll do the business, right?
Yeah, right, business.
But this just goes to what is my primary complaint about the episode, which is it is so weighed down with filler. But we'll get more into that. Somewhere in the habitat ring, mysterious skinny man looks for his quarters and is suddenly ambushed and hypo-sprayed by the mysterious aliens. How did they catch me through all my flawless tradecraft, he wonders as he loses consciousness. It's like openly talking about my plans in a public space. How did that backfire on me?
Honestly, I'm not sure how they did find him because they seem to already be watching him. So,
that's a good point. How'd they get onto him in the first place? Maybe they were onto the Vulcan lady.
Oh yeah, maybe they followed
and
her
then
to him,
she led them to him in their super secret meeting at the mall directory. And then
I guess later we find out that he's like part of a group of people who are like very openly vocal about their dislike for the situation. So maybe it wasn't hard to put 2 and 2 together when you find out like the guy from this disputed planet happens to be on Deep Space Nine at this time.
Yeah, it's true. Sisko arrives at his own quarters and finds Gul Dukat just sitting in there.
Yeah, super creepily.
Sisko panics and forgets he can just ask the computer where Jake is, instead having Kira locate him at his favorite girl ogling spot with Nog.
Well, I wondered about that because, like, if he doesn't have a comm badge, then you couldn't necessarily locate him. But there was a whole thing where Sisko very, like, ceremonially hands him a comm badge in a recent episode. So I'm like, does he not wear the comm badge when he's not on, assisting Chief O'Brien duty? And that's why you couldn't... I don't know.
I mean, I swear we have the computer locate people without comm badges sometimes, but I don't know how this computer tracking system works.
Kira finds him real quick, though.
Yeah. She's like, I bet I know where that little pervert is. Dukat proposes a joint trip to the neutral zone colonies to investigate exactly what's going on.
Demilitarized zone. Completely different from the neutral zone.
I'm sorry, demilitarized zone. Yeah. They take one of the runabouts, as Dukat snuck onto the station and has no ship, supposedly. It is a predictably tense trip. Along the way, they witness a battle between Federation and Cardassian colonists.
I like Sisko calling him out on like Cardassians being known for their photographic memories, which is the first time we're hearing about that. And then Dukat has... It's one of those moments where the language thing doesn't really make sense because Dukat has a very metaphorical thing about like photography, as photography existed like hundreds of years before this, where he's like, oh, so if you don't let me see that, then I won't be able to take my photograph for my photographic memory. And I was just like, that's not okay.
I mean, maybe the universal translator also translates into cultural and historical context or something.
I guess.
It would have to, because, I mean, they're using, like, idiom and stuff all the time. So.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, so Dukat is unable to call off the Cardassian ships, even after giving his super-duper command security codes. When it is over, he notes to Sisko that the colonists have managed to start their own little war without them doing anything.
Yep.
Quark has his dinner with the Vulcan lady. His seduction attempts don't go well, and it turns out she wants to arrange shipments of weapons, a continuous supply, as if she plans on supplying a large, prolonged conflict. Quark is intrigued, and apparently he's just willing to go along with it.
She wants troop transports, cobalt thorium devices.
I mean, Quark doesn't really... I mean, Quark's like, okay, let's do it.
I mean, we do find out later, I guess, spoiler, that Quark has relations in the weapons business. So I feel like that he could easily act as middleman here for that sort of thing.
Sure. Dukat and Sisko show up at one of the colonies to find the colonists arguing with some Cardassians over the battle that just took place. And our good friend Golovec is here. Last seen on Deep Space Nine, taunting O'Brien about the Vol mating season situation. And I guess we saw him on... I skimmed through that episode of Next Gen, the Wesley Goes Away episode.
Yeah.
And yep, he's there. So a little bit of continuity for you.
Yeah. This actor's getting some work.
Yep. Golovec accuses the colonists of conducting organized terrorist activities, and as proof provides a video of mysterious skinny man confessing to everything. Hudson demands that they question the man themselves, so the Cardassians haul in a dead body.
Which apparently they were just standing just outside the door with this dead body on a stretcher for who knows how long during this conversation, because they appear immediately.
Yep. Okay, at the right moment, take the dead body in and dump him on the table. But they claim that the guy committed suicide. This ridiculously dramatic display angers the colonists for some reason.
Yeah, who would have thought?
And who is that lead colonist? I forgot to look him up, but he is a guy I recognize.
Okay, so I think the guy who attacks Avec, right? So
The guy...
his name in here is Amoros, but he's played by Tony Plana. Oh, he's a voice in The Legend of Vox Machina. That's good. Let's see, what else is he in? The show Madam Secretary. One episode of lots of shows, which I'm assuming is not necessarily where you know him from. Playing with Fire, Startup, The Punisher TV series.
The Netflix one?
Yeah, he did 8 episodes of that as Rafael Hernandez. Oh, yeah. Okay.
I think I just might have seen this guy around, if he's one of those guys who's like in one episode of everything.
Yeah, he seems to be one of those type of guys.
Yeah,
2 episodes of The Blacklist.
He got brought back. Good for him.
1 episode of Psych. Oh, yeah, I remember him in that episode of Psych. I feel like he looks different now. Like, in all these shows, like that episode of Psych, that episode of, or those episodes of, he's in Elementary and Punisher. Mm-hmm. He's got like this older, like Hispanic guy, bad guy look.
Yeah.
And he doesn't look like that here. So
I definitely feel like I'm used to seeing him a little older. Anyway, later in Hudson's office, Sisko listens to Cal vent his dissatisfaction with the treaty and his suspicions of the Cardassian government's intentions. Sisko recalls the Circle incident and wonders if a similar Cardassian plot could be in play here to supply weapons to the Cardassian colonists.
Or is it the Circle incident?
Because he says it was the Euridians.
Right.
Yeah, I did a whole thing of like, wait, is that right? And I had to pause and look it up. It was the Krasari in the Circle incident. So maybe he's talking about a different incident?
Yeah, apparently the Cardassians are doing this all over the place.
Yeah. Strike 3, Cardassians. Because I remember it was the Krasari, the botanical DNA traders.
Right.
Euridian, you totally expect that kind of nonsense from the Euridians.
Oh man, he was in an episode of T.J. Hooker. I'm sure like William Shatner was blowing up cars all over the place. And
oh yeah. On their way back to Deep Space Nine, Dukat admits to Sisko that he knew about the skinny guy's interrogation and laments that Avec let him die. Because I guess that's just bad torturer practice.
Yeah, he's like, you don't let the guy kill himself. Like, you gotta keep him alive.
When Sisko gets outraged, Dukat is like, don't give me that. Dude killed 78 people.
Which, yeah, okay, fair.
Yeah, I mean, that would shut me up, so.
I mean, torturing him to death, or... I mean, I don't know if we believe, if anyone would believe that he actually committed suicide in Cardassian custody and was not tortured to death. But even...
He obviously got tortured. That's, like, bad enough.
Even assuming that he was tortured to death, you're like, that is outrageous, but he also did, murder a bunch of quote-unquote innocent people.
But Dukat denies knowledge of any weapons shipments to the Cardassian colonists. He's like, I would know. Nothing happens in the Cardassian government that Gul Dukat doesn't hear about, apparently, according to him.
Well, you know,
on the lives of his 7 children.
The leader of the Second Order or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Back at Deep Space Nine, Quark and mysterious Vulcan lady finalize their deal. When Quark tries to seal another deal, if you know what I'm talking about, Vulcan lady is like, maybe later.
Yeah, she is surprisingly open to the possibility. This isn't the normal interaction that you would expect someone like that to have with a Ferengi who's hitting on them. She's just like, you know what? You're kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. And she's a Vulcan, supposedly, so she wouldn't lie, right? So she wouldn't be like, you know, she wouldn't play the old, I mean, you're cute, but... I
mean, there's also the thing where it's like, the Vulcans have Pon Far, and I don't know how much they hook up in any way outside of Pon Far, so...
Oh, yeah. Do females have Pon Far?
That's actually a good question. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah.
It's not really addressed outside of like that one episode of the original series and then that one episode of Voyager.
Right. So Kira comes into Sisko's office and expresses her sympathies with the colonists and her mistrust of the Cardassians. Sisko feels an obligation to stop these terrorists. He claims it's for the Federation's responsibility for some reason. Even though it was made super clear that these guys are effectively Cardassian citizens now. And really, like, whatever happens to them there is, what they had coming. But
although I think Calvin in the earlier scene, like, says they're still Federation citizens, which, like, the wiki mentions is specifically the opposite of what was established in that episode of The Next Generation. So
that's
who
true.
knows?
I mean, I know a lot of countries, I think the United States is one of them, you literally cannot renounce your citizenship. Like, there's nothing you can do to make the country recognize you as not being a citizen anymore. Like, well, in America, because, the 13th Amendment spells out what a citizen is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say anything about being able to give it up. But it's like, I know there's a lot of countries that are like, no matter what you do, you are still recognized as a citizen. So maybe
you still have to pay us taxes.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, you're always welcome back home. Anyway, let's get to the taxes. So, yes, now a man in a Starfleet security uniform distracts the guard outside Dukat's guest quarters, while a mysterious Vulcan lady sneaks in with a little nerve pinch. The two lure Dukat to an airlock, saying that another bomb was found. But when they get there, Dukat is ambushed by the colonists.
It's interesting that Dukat, he trusts the random Starfleet security officer who's standing here with a non-uniformed Vulcan woman for some reason, who's acting like she's also part of this situation.
Yeah.
I feel like we may be trading on, like, this idea that exists that Vulcans are trustworthy.
Yeah, could be. I would be like, because if Dukat is obviously very paranoid, he even requests like a Starfleet guard instead of a Bajoran guard. You think?
Yeah, he's like, some of these guys are still around from when I was in charge.
You think he'd at least be like, hey, what happened to that other guy?
You would think. Or like, can I talk to Sisko directly before I wander off with random strangers?
It's like, let me verify this with Sisko first. But no, he just goes off with them. So yeah, he's ambushed by the colonists. And he makes a respectable attempt to get away, but is quickly phasered and dragged off. Which, good on him for at least trying. He like punched a guy and ran like 2 feet.
I was surprised that she just didn't also nerve pinch him.
That's true. Maybe she was out of nerve pinch energy or something.
Or it doesn't work on Cardassians. They have like the bone ridge there.
Let's see. Sisko. Who the heck is Krek?
Krek? Kira? Did you mistype?
I must be. I'm going to say Kira. Sisko and Kira quickly deduce that Dukat was probably taken back to one of the colonies in the DMZ. Kira receives a signal from a group claiming credit for the kidnapping. They call themselves the Maquis.
Bum, bum, bum.
That's the name of the episode. Sisko, Kira, and Bashir set out on a runabout and track the ship to an asteroid in the Badlands, which is a very, bad-sounding region of space.
Yep. Don't go there. It's bad.
They beam down to the asteroid and are immediately ambushed by a group of Maquis, including their leader, Cal Hudson.
Oh my god.
Bum, bum, bum. The end. So anyway, I'm just going to get right to my main complaint about this episode.
Okay.
Which is that there are several scenes that just take up time and seem to be just there to take up time. So these scenes include looking for Jake, Dax and Kira arguing about who has the worst taste in men, Sisko and Hudson catching up about what each other's families are up to, Quark's tedious yet amusing seduction attempts. So I feel like there's maybe a little bit of the story was a little thin, especially in those first few acts. And so they attempted to put in some extras, much to my frustration.
See, I can agree with almost all of that it's all unnecessary and filler-ish, and yet I don't have the same problem with it because I like almost all of those scenes.
Sure. I mean, Quark. I just felt like there was so much of that Quark stuff, like Quark trying to get in that Vulcan lady's pants.
Especially because you kind of know that it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, what is my reaction supposed to be if it does happen? Like, yeah, you Quark. Get her, Quark.
No, yeah. I mean,
like Sisko and Hudson, I feel like there were way too many scenes of like Sisko and Hudson and Dax being like, "Hey, what's up?" Like,
Yeah, the Sisko and Hudson is the one of those that I'm like, I don't really care about that.
How's Jake? Yeah. So,
Like,
he's throwing curveballs and doing all kinds.
Yeah,
of
exactly. I don't need the I never need Sisko's baseball whatever. Like that's just a part of the series because I don't care about baseball that I never need. But you know, some of the other stuff, like I said, I find the Quark stuff amusing, even if I agree that it's kind of out of not necessary. And then I like when he shows up and they have what I guess is a complete misunderstanding, where Sisko feels there's something very sinister about the fact that Dukat broke into his quarters and is sitting there waiting for him. He's like, "Where's my son?" And Dukat says the only thing that he can say is like, "Oh, he's not here." And he's like, "What did you do with him?" And he calls to, and then it takes Dukat a minute to be like, "Wait, you think I did something with you? Dude, I wouldn't do that. Like, what the fuck?" Like,
maybe.
I feel like it's a fun moment where like they really do not understand each other with what's happening.
I mean, that part's okay, but I mean, I think you just could have been like, you know, maybe he's like, "Hey, Sisko to Jake, are you okay?" And Jake would have been like, "Yeah, I'm checking out these girls." And he would have been like, "Oh," and then like Dukat could have had his outrage or whatever. I don't know.
But another episode where Jake does not appear is only mentioned.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like the episode got a little stronger when we got towards the end, when stuff actually started happening, like Dukat gets kidnapped and stuff. Then it got kind of exciting.
Oh, and the one I'm forgetting, the Dax Kira scene about like who has the worst taste in men. I actually love that. That is that is a hilarious moment, and I like because we don't get to see all that much like that sort of thing, that sort of like interplay, and about like stuff that's not at all relevant to the episode in any way. So I kind of liked having that moment between them, although it's clearly not really Bechtel test passing material.
Yeah, and Kira's being kind of an a-hole.
She is, like, she's being a little bit racist there.
She's like, "Dude's got a transparent skull. That grosses me out." And Dax is like, "But I like him. He's a cool guy." Yeah. And Kira's like, "Ugh, gross." Like, come on, Kira, be enlightened.
I mean, I feel like the fact of the matter is probably the majority of people, of Bajorans living on Bajor, don't have a lot of experience with alien races in general. Like, they have experienced the Cardassians, and that's about it. And so I could understand them not being that accepting of like random other species that are unusual to them. Okay,
so we'll write it off as some world building then. Some character, some realistic character depiction or something.
And the guy with the transparent skull, who I mentioned in an earlier episode, but apparently this is the first time that he's actually mentioned, Captain Baudet.
Oh, really? I thought he was mentioned earlier, but I could be wrong.
The wiki says it's the first time he's referenced, at least by name.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Was it the Uridians who were running guns to the Circle? We already talked about that.
It was not.
It was not the Uridians. They possibly were running guns to someone else for the Cardassians. Who knows? Okay, so often when a guest character is secretly the bad guy, they at least pretend to act like a super good guy to throw us off.
Yep.
Whereas this guy, you could kind of tell something was up with this guy. Like, you know, if I was Sisko, I'd have been like, "Hey, do we like need to have a talk about, you know, what you're feeling right now?" Or because he's obviously very frustrated with the whole situation.
Yeah, he really should have been like, "Hey, I mean, let's talk this out a little more."
Yeah. But you know, hindsight is always 20/20 in those situations.
That's true.
So, you know, Sisko could have just been like, "This guy's just venting. It's okay."
But that's an interesting point that actually is striking me more because recently I've been watching a lot of Scooby-Doo with the kids.
Okay.
And it almost always turns out to be the person who is like closest and helping the Scooby Gang the most that turns out to be the bad guy. Like we've been watching the kids fell in love with the show Scooby-Doo and Guess Who, where there's like celebrity guest stars who they're 3 years old. They don't know any of these celebrities, but they're still like, we want to watch the Mark Hamill episode. Not because they know who Mark Hamill is, but because Mark Hamill name is said like a million times in that episode, so they have internalized that is a person in the episode, so they want to watch that episode. But it's like Mark Hamill's not the bad guy, so that's actually an exception. But later on there's an episode where they meet Christian Slater, and Christian Slater wants their help solving like the mystery of the werewolf who's like destroyed his school prom years ago and is now back to destroy like the reunion prom that they have to try to make up for that destroyed prom. And then it turns out Christian Slater is the werewolf after working with them the entire episode to solve the mystery.
And to be clear, this is the real Christian Slater, right?
Yes.
The real Christian Slater is implied to be a werewolf.
No, he's disguised as a werewolf.
Oh, okay. He's okay.
Like the explanation. It's funny because it's a musical episode also, and so there's lots of songs. And then after they catch the werewolf and reveal he's Christian Slater, Velma has like a whole thing where she's like, "Why?" Like a whole song where she's like, "Explain to us why you did this, Christian Slater. Like what is going on?" And then he goes off on this tangent, and she pops back in with like, "That doesn't actually answer the question that I just asked." But it turns out that like, he destroyed the original prom because this girl that he really liked came up to him and wanted to dance, but she was like an Irish like river dance dancer, and he did not know how to river dance and was so embarrassed that he ran out, and in order to preserve his reputation had to then dress up like a werewolf and destroy the prom.
Sure. Okay. I'm a little surprised that like a show for kids younger than like 30 would expect them to know who Christian Slater is, but
that it's the case with so many of the guest stars on this show. Like, quite honestly, I am shocked at, I mean, you know, Mark Hamill, yeah, they have an episode with Batman, an episode with The Flash, and you're like, okay, yeah, kids could know that. But then there's like the Steve Urkel episode, and there's like the Ricky Gervais episode, and who else is in here? Like there's a George Takei episode, there's Jeff Dunham, Malcolm McDowell,
wow,
Jeff Foxworthy.
All these kids are fans of A Clockwork Orange.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. I guess he's kind of, you know, hip and cool or whatever. Yeah. But it's just, there's the most random, like, quote unquote celebrities. You got like Halsey. I was like, who even? All right, whatever.
Just whoever they could book, I guess. I guess it's probably more for the parents.
Yeah, that would make sense, actually.
Anyway, back to Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, back to Deep Space Nine. This is not a Scooby-Doo review show, sorry.
I don't know. It's kind of also like, you know, so many like detective shows and stuff when there's like the big guest star.
Yep.
And you always know that guy's the killer.
I mean, it was easier in like the Columbo days when it's like,
well,
Leonard
when you
Nimoy
saw him commit the murder at the beginning.
You see Leonard Nimoy kill the guy at the beginning, so it's not like the mystery of that. But
oh my gosh, yeah. Dick Van Dyke was the killer.
That's a great episode.
He was in several.
Dick Van Dyke does a terrific job.
Wasn't he in like multiple episodes?
Hold on.
I know a lot of like major.
Yes,
people.
Several people did play multiple bad guys. I don't
know
that Dick Van Dyke did, and I'm gonna have to find out. No, not Diagnosis Murder. He was in a lot of episodes of that.
Am I thinking of Diagnosis Murder or Quincy MD? Which one was the one I liked?
I don't know which one was the one you liked. No, it looks like he was in one episode of Columbo, this says.
But yeah, so I mean, I think if you're a savvy TV viewer, you could kind of tell what was going on with Cal Hudson. But okay, here's another point. So we're flying into the Badlands after a group of terrorists who have just kidnapped a guy.
Mm-hmm.
We chase them to this asteroid, and we read their life signs down on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
What do? All beam down together in the middle of where they are.
And we even have 3 people this time, so they don't have the excuse of, like, we need 2 people to watch each other's backs on the planet.
Uh-huh. This was not a smart plan.
No.
This is a... You know, a lot of times we have the Star Trek trope where they beam down and then someone comes and holds them at gunpoint or whatever.
Yeah.
But how are you expecting any other outcome but that?
You chased a group of terrorists with 3 people and then just went down. Like, what did you think was going to happen?
It's like, how about let's beam like a mile away?
One of whom was Dr. Bashir, who we know can't fight for shit.
Yeah. Yeah, at least leave Bashir up there for a little bit and then call him down when the coast is clear.
Yeah, when you need medical help.
Yeah,
because he's going to be useless otherwise.
Yeah,
he will actively hinder you.
Yeah, he'll like start shooting you, or
he'll just be super loud and like obnoxious while walking through the jungle.
Yeah, he's just everything about this plan was tactically unsound.
You might have been thinking of William Shatner. He plays a bad guy 2 times in Columbo.
He was in 2 Twilight Zone episodes also.
Hmm.
Also, I was thinking, is it wise to bring Kira on the Dukat rescue mission?
Oh, that's actually a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Like, do we... I mean, first of all, Kira might have some conflicting loyalties, but also, like, she's a Bajoran officer. Do we need to get the Bajorans tangled up in this whole situation?
Yeah, that's not going to help the politics of any of this. Although she's probably one of the best, like, fighters in his main crew because of her experience. So I could understand why he would be tempted to bring her. My first thought, I mean, if I'm going to on an away mission to try to rescue a hostage, I don't know what the situation is going to be like when I get there. I have no idea what any of it's going to look like. I bring Odo.
Oh, yeah. But Odo has to stay behind on the station and review the security failures that allowed Dukat to get kidnapped, apparently.
Which, we didn't even mention that, but Odo has his spiel about how he basically wants, like, martial law on the promenade at all times, and that will allow him to keep things under control.
Oh, yeah. His general, why do I have to do all this Federation nonsense? Yeah.
I mean, at least you could have brought Chief O'Brien. Like, there's your guy who knows how to fight and will take orders and not have, like, conflicted feelings about what's going on. Even rescuing Dukat when we know he doesn't really like Cardassians, he'd go for it.
Well, I mean, O'Brien can hold his own in a tense situation, so he's definitely a guy you want.
Exactly. Like, he's been in war before. Like, if you're going after a group of terrorists, bring Chief O'Brien along.
Well, I guess the writers just knew what they needed those characters for in part 2. So they were like, nope, you don't come on the mission. Which
really, three people after a whole group of terrorists was probably a bad idea from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah, put together like a commando squad for that.
And this is another situation where, like, not having a decent starship is really screwing them over.
Yeah, although, I mean, this is like a small band of colonists, so you don't really need a big starship, but...
Well, but it's like when they were approaching that fight that was happening earlier in the episode, in the runabout, like, Sisko and Dukat are coming up, and they're trying to call them and tell them to stop.
Yeah.
But, I mean, do they want to get involved in that fight? These ships all have bigger guns than you thought they would.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm actually surprised to learn that the runabout has photon torpedoes.
Only some of them do. I think it's like that's the big extra like thingy that shows up on the back thingy. Sometimes is the photon launcher, I'm pretty sure.
That was a fun scene where Dukat's like, yeah, I know where the photon torpedo button is.
It's like, I will personally fire the photons that will destroy you. And then, without asking any sort of permission, he's like, okay, I want to launch those torpedoes now. And Sisko's like, all right, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's that button. He's like, I know.
It's like, I knew all of the controls of this ship before I ever came on board.
But luckily some other ships came and blew them up before Dukat had to do that.
I do like his, like, the very casual, it's like, yeah, all the stuff is outdated compared to the stuff we have anyway.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, you got any fun novels or anything?
There's honestly not much in here, not much extra about this episode.
I mean, yeah, this is like part 1 of the Maquis, so... There's
a couple little details, like, it says that in the original pitch or whatever, what Ira Stephen Bear says is the way that the episode got started originally was that Jim Crocker and the writing staff, including Michael, decided to do Shane. Don't ask me why.
I've never seen Shane, so...
I haven't either, but apparently it's like, I had to go out and kind of like try to figure out like the general idea of it to figure out what the meaning was there. And, it's like a lone gunfighter protecting or saving something or other. I forget. Sure. I looked it up and then now have already forgotten it. But
it's a Western.
Honestly, the main thing I remember about Shane is not from the movie Shane, but from the movie The Negotiator, where they have a lengthy discussion about the ending of Shane.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Whether Shane was dead or not. And that
Yeah.
becomes his code word to be like, his like little wink wink.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think you're right. Shane was dead. What a great movie.
And what else? There's another thing in here that, like, one of the early ideas for this was like Jake would be involved, and it was like an old friend of Sisko's was now a mercenary, and that was the Shane thing. Was
okay.
So like Jake would get involved with this friend of Sisko's, and I guess that evolved into what we see.
Okay. They just did away with that, and then also did away with the Shane.
Yeah. This is the first episode that refers to the Badlands, which is foreshadowing what happens to Voyager like a year later.
Yeah.
Because there are like several ships have disappeared in there.
This is all playing into my Rick Berman conspiracy theory.
The guy... Okay, so I mentioned earlier that the costume designer originally had a more revealing outfit for Sakona and had to dial it back. The costume designer says that he still likes the outfit she wears in the episode and thinks that it shows off her figure and is much sexier than a Vulcan has ever been seen in on Star Trek before.
If you say so, man.
Yeah, I was like, really? That's
like this is your goal?
Your sexy Vulcan? Okay, if you say so.
I mean, I totally buy that Quark is into her.
Well, yeah. Quark seems to be into almost anyone that he thinks he has a shot with, or some people that he doesn't even think he has a shot with.
I don't need to like see a bunch of cleavage and stuff to get sold on that concept.
Yeah. We get another rule of acquisition in this episode.
Oh yeah.
Never begin a negotiation on an empty stomach.
And he explains the entire rules of acquisition to her, and then she likens it to like what she compared it to like laws or a constitution or something. That's not really what they are.
Yeah. Oh, and there's one bit that I read this in the wiki before actually watching it in the that part of the episode, and it really pops out to me after knowing what to look for. But so after they come back from the demilitarized zone, and Dukat and Sisko are walking along the promenade talking, if you look, the chest piece of Dukat's costume has clearly detached, and it's like flopping loose, and it's like hitting his arms as he's swinging his arms as he walks. It's like super obvious. And
I did notice that. But I was like, maybe he's just like, letting loose after the mission or whatever, wants to breathe a little bit.
I was just like, wow, that is wow, okay. I probably would not have noticed that if I hadn't read it, but yeah.
If that was a mistake, you'd think someone would have caught that, but
you would think, yeah. But yeah, that's all the interesting things that I pulled out.
Okay. So I guess we can jump into ratings then. What do you think of this episode? How would you rate the Maquis Part 1? It's almost hard to rate, but
it is hard to rate. And I was gonna say it's kind of always hard to rate the first part of a multi-parter,
right?
And especially since I don't remember the next part that well. But and then thinking about saying that, I was like, well, that wasn't really true when we did the beginning of this season. Like the first episode came out, the first of a 3-parter, and I was like, I like this episode. I like this episode a lot. Yeah. So I don't have the same instant feeling.
Yeah, that episode had a lot of cool stuff in it, though, like the the Bajoran prisoner of war guy and all that stuff. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, and part of the reason that I liked that episode as much as I did was that it immediately addressed a lot of the issues that I had in season 1. And right. So, like, that was like, okay, it's like they heard me. This is great. I don't dislike this episode, I will say. Like, I think it's fine. It's going to be another one of those where it's like, I mean, it's fine. So that's going to put it at that just above the line for me, which I have a bunch of episodes there.
Your Lieutenant Commanders, your large stable of Lieutenant Commander episodes.
Let me look at the list and see where this is going to fit in my giant Lieutenant Commander.
I'll just remind you, Blood Oath is not in there.
No, Blood Oath. I remember the captains. That's Okay, let's look here. I'm gonna put it after Rivals.
Below Rivals?
Below Rivals, yeah.
Above Shadow Play?
Above Shadow Play, exactly.
Interesting. Okay. Let me put that in before it gets lost to time. The Maquis. Again, I mean, his title is nice and to the point, I guess.
It's definitely an appropriate title. This is not one of those that we can be like, this title is so weird and doesn't apply at all. This,
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know what that is until almost the end of the episode. But knowing what it is, the title makes perfect sense.
Yep. It's not called like Shane or anything like that. Yeah, I'm also gonna give it a lieutenant commander. I mean, it's a good enough setup, I guess. And I'm not. I don't know if we really this needed to be a two-parter. I guess we can make that final evaluation when we rate next episode.
Yeah.
But at least the last part, the cliffhanger part, was exciting enough. So, although I still kind of complain about. There's just like so many filler scenes one after another. It's like any one I could have tolerated, but it was like I felt for like 5 scenes in a row, I was just waiting for them to get to the point of the episode. So that kind of annoyed me. But yeah, I mean, it's watchable enough. So yeah, I'm also going to give it Lieutenant Commander. I'm going to put it below. I'm just going to go through one at a time. I'm going to put it below Shadow Play.
Okay.
I'm going to put it below Necessary Evil.
Okay.
I'm going to put it below Invasive Procedures. I feel like it's getting to be about on par with Rules of Acquisition. Always forgetting what my thought processes were.
Yeah, it's hard to replicate the one moment where after the hour of discussion you come up with a placement. Yeah.
And this is why I always say I don't believe in like 10-point or 20-point or 100-point rating scales, because it's like it's meaningless. It depends on your relationship with the episode at that point. But I'm going to put it below Invasive Procedures.
Okay.
And above Rules of Acquisition. It'll be happy sitting there with those guys, I think. I think we covered that one pretty well. Do you have any final thoughts? Final Scooby-Doo?
No, just
summaries.
Check out our coverage of Picard, which should have started already by the time this episode is released. So,
okay, let me do some math.
Be a little fresh.
So, episode 2 should be out, and this and that should both be on Apple Podcasts and maybe other podcast platforms if I get around to it. And if you're listening on those platforms, it's also available on YouTube on the Fletcher from the Deep YouTube channel. So just wherever you like to listen, you can listen. But yep, Star Trek Picard, go check that out if you're interested.
Even if you didn't watch Star Trek Picard, know, we're probably more entertaining than the actual show, I'm sure. So
I mean, I watched season 1 of Star Trek Picard entirely through other people's reviews. So I totally understand if that's the way you want to do it. And, we'll have some fun conversations. So come check it out. Anyway, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. Be sure to check out the description where I occasionally put links to interesting things. I'm Fletcher, about to say goodbye as Data.
See ya.
And remember, every once in a while, declare peace. It confuses the hell out of your enemies. No hell in your enemies. They'll be all confused out. The end. Do 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 do.